it stands on its own. If you have strategy without tactics, you have big thinkers and no action. If you have tactics without strategy, you'll have disorder. Does that
Boy,
make sense, Matt?
it really does. I mean, they go hand in hand, and uh, and yet you have to look at, the board largely is a strategic organization.
Hopefully,
Yes, right,
a good board is
and,
strategic
and the and the executive director down through the staff is a tactical organization. They're getting the things done.
with a strategy.
Right, they need the strategic guidance of the
Correct.
board, and the board needs the tactical operations of the staff. It really is a codependent relationship.
It is.
Yeah, in a positive way.
In a positive way, and it should be balanced.
Yeah.
So think about that. When you look at your organization, think about whether you're just doing strategy and everybody's running to figure out
Mhm.
how to execute, or if people are executing but you don't know where you're going. Board meetings, my favorites. How many people enjoy going to board meetings?
Yeah, really.
Not many. And why do we think that is? A couple reasons. One is that time is often spent with people reading or reviewing reports.
Mhm.
Okay, here's a couple rules. Everything, I mean, everything has to be prepared in advance. There's a number of sites that will help you create the software so things can be distributed in advance.
And we're talking, the one that comes to mind is Board Effect, but
Board Effect,
it's
yeah,
a class of
that's
this
right.
software that
So
works
Board
with it.
Effect, and I know them so I can speak to them, creates the software for your board so that everybody is getting the same information at the same time.
Yeah, board portal software.
Board portal software. Thanks, Matt.
There you go.
Okay. Everything has to be prepared in advance. I mean, there may be an emergency that comes up, that's fine. But people need to come to committees prepared. I mean, excuse
Well,
me, board meetings.
but that actually, the board portal software is a huge help on that, because doing it paper and binders and all that, you have to have this stuff prepared well in advance. And I'm not suggesting that using a portal software you can slack off, but you can really get something up there on a much more timely basis
And
through
why should
software.
and you have staff who are spending
Yeah,
2 days of their life preparing for board
in
meetings?
front of a copier.
Yeah, that's before there was technology. So it needs to be distributed. I don't think anybody gets a cut not coming prepared,
Mhm.
because if they're getting their documents online, they've already read them. If they're not prepared to be part of the discussion, that's okay.
And even if you don't go sophisticated as some board portal software, have a shared drive or a shared Dropbox folder where people can get this stuff right away.
Right.
Yeah.
So people are getting all the reports in advance. So two things. The board meeting is spent in discussion. There's an agenda that's a realistic agenda, and the things on the agenda require input, dialogue. People may need to break into small groups during a board meeting to discuss some issues, but it's dynamic. So people want to come to the meeting because they're engaged. Meetings have realistic timeframes. If it says it's a 2-hour meeting, it is a 2-hour meeting.
Well, the other thing too that crossed my mind, I've really been effective with, is having we'll call it in effect a mission show. I worked for an arts organization one time, and we had somebody show what they were doing, a program piece to that. And that was huge. People were like, wow, they gave them something to talk about after the board meeting to their
Absolutely.
friends.
Yes, I like the idea of at board meetings that a staff person with a designated program comes in and maybe for 10 minutes
Yeah, right.
does a presentation. So people on the board get to meet staff and they get to really hear the details of what's going on inside.
Mhm.
But again, it's dynamic, it's face to face. So people are coming together face to face, they're having dialogue face to face.
The board meetings that happen virtually, I mean, it's totally possible. It's not ideal, right? I mean, you see some organizations try to pull that off, and it's really tempting today. But having face-to-face communication really makes a difference.
So I helped an organization for a while that was international, and it was young people, and it was a very exciting service organization. And they used one of the Google Docs programs. So everybody was on there. You could see
Yeah,
everybody.
Google Hangouts, probably.
Google Hangouts. So nobody could be multitasking during the call because they were on the call. They
Mm,
weren't sitting there on a phone
yeah.
doing 10 other things. So if you really have to do this without people being face to face, I think they have to show up physically. And that's why you don't need too many people
Yeah.
because you can't have 30
Right.
people
You
on
only
a
have so
frame.
so much bandwidth, especially for
Yeah.
international. So the first point you made about people not wanting to come to board meetings, the very best board that I was a part of was one where meetings tended to be a little bit longer, but I always felt that was okay because I showed up in person. I liked the people around me.
Mhm.
I got to know them. They got to know me. It was as much a social thing as it was a business thing.
Absolutely.
And I felt that my opinions and thoughts were being taken seriously and that I was actively engaged at the meeting as a full participant. I looked forward to those meetings. And also, it was an organization where we were a regional church board. And so we went to different places. And I always found it interesting to see different sites where our programs were going on
Great.
and having that level of engagement with the people.
So let's talk about a couple points that I think people don't always think about in terms of board meetings. One is an executive director, CEO is welcome to come to the meeting, but they can always be excused if there's a conversation you want to
Mm,
have that you don't want them to be a part of. Like, there may be issues about performance or other questions, and that's okay that they don't sit through the whole meeting. And if they get used to that, then it becomes protocol. They come in
yeah.
for part of the meeting. They are not leading the meeting. They are not presenting the agenda at the meeting. They are there to be informing.
As a resource.
As a resource, they are not running the meeting. Because I joined a board, I joined a board a while ago, and the executive director was running the board meeting. And I
Mm,
thought, no, wait, something's wrong here.
yeah.
Well, they had a lot of information to convey. They learned to change that so that the board chair conveyed the information and the executive director was there as a resource, made her life much easier, but she didn't have to spend 2 days preparing for the board meeting.
Hmm. And it also got the board chair more, got their head into the organization
Absolutely.
more because they had to actually know
Right.
this stuff instead of just hear it.
So, board agenda that's a realistic agenda and always time to make sure that you're dealing with anything unexpected because it will definitely come up. So, make sure there's time on the agenda for emergencies, unexpected issues, things that people want to raise, and make sure, by the way, that everybody gets to contribute something to the agenda. Don't make it and give it out without your board members having a chance to offer ideas, suggestions, questions.
Yep. Yep.
This is engagement we're talking about.
Right. Board
Engagement.
chair. What's funny? It's engagement.
Board members need to know what their responsibilities are on a board and how they can be engaged with the organization. It's always surprising to me to learn that boards do not expect board members to come to external programs,
Mm.
events. I don't mean just fundraising. I mean, maybe they're doing a panel, maybe they're doing some education piece. Board members should be aware of it and they should be expected to engage at some point in time with something that the organization's doing.
I've always found it interesting that once you are identified as a board member of whatever organization you're part of, people look at you differently. The program the staff will look at you differently, like, oh, a board member is coming, right? They look forward to engaging you. Sometimes they'll tell you things, sometimes they won't tell you things. Then even the people who are the mission recipients, the people you're serving, will appreciate the fact that somebody there, one of the higher ups,
Yeah.
is engaged with that program and doing something there. Might want to give you feedback or not. It really puts a different spin on the activity that it's occurring if a board member is present.
I totally agree with that. So, and that should be part of board member expectations. They should know what's coming up and should be invited, should be encouraged.
And should be
Partnership,
recognized when they're there.
please, thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
always recognized. Really, a shout out every time a board member shows up.
Yeah, well, and not just to stroke their ego, which is not a bad
It's
thing,
okay.
right? But also so that the other people in the room know that a board member is here and that so this is important enough for a board member to show up.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So again, it's an expectation. It's not a surprise, it's a clear expectation. So I want to jump off from that to say that a good board chair should be having one-on-ones during the year with their board members.
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent point.
So they're meeting with the chief executive on a regular basis, a minimum of once a month, every 2 weeks sometimes, but
Hmm.
minimum of once a month meeting with the chief executive, and at least once during a year sitting down one-on-one over coffee with every board member.
Yeah.
Keeping them engaged, learning from them. Maybe there's some expertise or context they have, and you won't get it unless you have that one-on-one.
Just hit my head right now. Buy him a Starbucks card.
Okay.
But that's your perk to your board chair is to get them a Starbucks card.
Right. No, that's a great idea.
Yeah,
Because it shouldn't be out of their pocket that they're doing
Well,
it.
right, but not even that. But it's true. But it's just like a nice thing. Like, okay, it sets up the expectation, and honestly, it's in their wallet all the time. So they see that card and they say, "Oh yeah, I got to go take somebody out for coffee."
I like that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So there it is, right? So
Right.
they're not spending, $10 a week on coffee on their own. The organization is providing for that.
Right. Right.
And in the course of that, both when you orient people, when you're designating people to be on the board, you should know what expertise they're bringing and that you're putting them on the right projects, the right committees. Sometimes people want to be on the committee that's using their expertise.
Mhm.
Sometimes they want to be someplace else and learn something new.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're making the right fit for them.
Well, and that's an excellent point because I know as a person who has expertise in fundraising, sometimes I just don't want to be on the
Right.
fundraising committee.
Right.
But I'm happy to give some thoughts and advice on that, or bring my fundraising perspective to other aspects of the organization.
Right.
And so everybody's going to have a different take on that. And yet there are some people who are on boards because they have that expertise, or I think there's like a CPA firm, a law firm, somebody that a marketing firm that will say they want their people on boards and have that, and so they're there to bring that expertise.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is an aside, but I just want to mention it that really it's not written into law, but nobody should be on your board who transacts business with your organization.
Oh, yes.
It happens all the time.
No, you're right. You're
It
right.
is a way big conflict of interest.
Right.
So nobody from your accounting firm, nobody from the bank that's your bank
Yeah.
should be on there. No consultant. The strategic consultant can't be on your board.
And this it gets to policies and kind of the framework of how you set up your board. But having these rules in place ahead of time is huge.
So I was doing consulting for a nonprofit consulting organization, and they sent me in to meet with a board that they said had been problematic. And I went in there and I met with them, and I always ask people what brought to the organization, how they got involved. And I'm not exaggerating. Everyone on the board was there because they were getting work from the organization. So the
Wow.
whole board was made up of contractors for the organization. So there was no way they were going to be a viable board because they weren't concerned about the mission of the organization. They were only concerned that they were getting work from the board.
Well, so that brings up something that I experienced very early in my career. It was fascinating to me at that point, still is today. I was with a college who was a denominational school that had, in effect, representatives from the different denominations district on the board. And that made up a big chunk of the board. Then they had at-large people. And the president came in, and one of his big tasks was to flip the script on this and to say that you were a board member of our college first and a representative, and that you represented the college back to your district, not the district's interest in the college. And once people kind of turned that page and kind of saw that differently, it really made a big difference because when somebody comes in and feels that they have an agenda they have to bring to their board,
Right.
it's a whole different world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's about expectations
Right.
on both sides.
Yeah.
So be clear about that.
Yeah, exactly.